The dawn came quietly over New Melbourne on that Tuesday morning, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Nobody knew it would be the last peaceful sunrise humanity would ever witness. Captain Rebecca Torres stood at her kitchen window, coffee mug warming her hands, watching her daughter Emma chase butterflies in the garden. The 8-year-old's laughter rang out like wind chimes, pure and unaware. Rebecca smiled, grateful for this moment before her shift at the Pacific Defense Network. She had spent 15 years protecting Earth from theoretical threats, training for invasions that strategy boards said would never come. Today, theory would become terrifying reality. Halfway across the world, Dr. Hassan Okonkwo adjusted his telescope at the Kenyan Space Observatory. The astrophysicist had been tracking unusual energy signatures for 3 days, anomalies that defied every known law of physics. His colleague, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, leaned over his shoulder, her expression troubled. The readings showed massive objects decelerating from faster-than-light speeds, entering the solar system's outer rim. Hassan reached for the emergency comm line, his fingers trembling slightly. Before he could press the button, the sky above Nairobi split open with light. They came without diplomacy, without warning, without mercy. The Krell Armada materialized over every major city simultaneously, their ships like massive obsidian daggers pointed at Earth's heart. Each vessel stretched 3 kilometers long, their hulls absorbing light itself, making them appear as holes torn in reality. On the lead ship's bridge, Warlord Thane surveyed the blue planet below with cold satisfaction. His species had consumed 17 civilizations across the galaxy. Humanity would be the 18th. Rebecca's phone exploded with alerts as she drove toward the base. The sky above Sydney Harbor turned dark as 3 Krell warships settled into position, their presence alone creating electromagnetic storms that knocked out power grids. She pressed the accelerator harder, her mind racing to Emma, to her ex-husband David, who was supposed to pick her up from school today, to the millions of people who had no idea what was coming. The Pacific Defense Network's command center erupted into controlled chaos when Rebecca arrived. General William Zhang stood at the strategic display, his weathered face carved from stone as he processed the reports flooding in. Beijing was under fire. Moscow had gone silent. Los Angeles was burning. Rebecca took her station at tactical operations, her hands moving through familiar protocols even as her heart hammered against her ribs. Next to her, Lieutenant James Park was already running attack simulations, his young face pale but focused. The first human counterattack launched within the hour. Fighter squadrons from 12 nations rose to meet the Krell, their pilots knowing the odds but flying anyway. Rebecca watched the tactical feeds, each blue dot representing someone's son, daughter, husband, wife. The Krell point defense systems activated, streams of energy that moved faster than human reflexes could track. The blue dots began disappearing, hundreds of them, then thousands. General Zhang's voice cut through the command center, steady despite the catastrophe unfolding. All forces, fall back to defensive positions. Activate Protocol Shepard. Rebecca's blood went cold. Protocol Shepard was the doomsday contingency, a plan nobody thought would ever be needed. While Earth's military bought time, the Shepard stations would evacuate humanity's last hope into the stars. Deep beneath the Australian outback, engineer Victoria Cross received the activation codes for Shepard Station Alpha. The facility had been built in secret over 20 years, a massive underground complex housing 3 colony ships. Each vessel could carry 50,000 people, carefully selected for genetic diversity and essential skills. Victoria had helped design these ships, never imagining she would have to launch them in anger. Her team of 200 engineers began the startup sequence, their practiced efficiency masking their terror. The Krell bombardment intensified as their sensors detected increased activity around Shepard Station sites. Orbital strikes hammered military installations worldwide. The Great Wall crumbled under directed energy beams. The Eiffel Tower melted into slag. Warlord Thane watched the destruction with satisfaction. Then his tactical officer reported something curious. Human forces were concentrating around 12 seemingly random locations, fighting with suicidal determination to protect empty ground. Rebecca coordinated the defense of Shepard Alpha from her console, directing every available unit to the outback. The Krell had noticed the pattern and were moving to investigate. She pulled up the evacuation status, her chest tight, only 40% loaded. They needed more time. General Zhang appeared at her shoulder, his voice quiet. My daughter is on that ship, Rebecca. So is my grandson. Buy them whatever time you can. The general walked to the center of the command room and opened a channel to all remaining forces worldwide. This is General Zhang to all units. Humanity faces extinction today, but we will not go quietly. Every minute you fight, every second you hold gives our children a chance to survive among the stars. Make the enemy pay for every inch of earth. Make them remember that humans do not yield. Make them remember we were here. From bunkers and bases, from damaged ships and crumbling cities. The response came back in a chorus of defiant voices, acknowledged, standing firm. For humanity, for Earth. Rebecca watched fresh contacts appear on her screen as reserve units that should have retreated moved forward instead. Old pilots who had been grounded for years climbed into vintage aircraft. Police officers and firefighters picked up military weapons they barely knew how to use. The Krell had superior technology, but they were about to learn what desperation looked like. Hassan and Yuki had made it to the Nairobi Defense Command, offering their expertise to coordinate evacuations. Hassan watched the orbital patterns of Krell ships, using his astrophysics background to predict their movements. There he pointed at the display. They have a gap in coverage over the Indian Ocean. We can route civilian transports through that corridor. Yuki was already calculating flight paths, her fingers dancing across multiple screens. The corridor would last maybe 20 minutes before the Krell adjusted. But 20 minutes could save thousands. Rebecca received the updated evacuation routes and immediately began redirecting resources to protect the corridor. She barely noticed the hours passing as she worked, barely registered the reports of cities falling, barely allowed herself to think about Emma waiting at home with David, confused and frightened. Focus on the mission. Save who you can. Make it mean something. As night fell over Australia, bringing no relief from the burning skies, Shepherd Alpha reported 70% capacity. Victoria Cross stood in the launch control room, watching families stream through the embarkation gates. Children clutched toys and parents. Elders moved with quiet dignity. Scientists carried hard drives containing humanity's accumulated knowledge. These were not soldiers or heroes, just ordinary people being asked to become the seeds of a new civilization. The Krell finally located Shepherd Alpha and launched a dedicated strike force. Rebecca saw them coming on her screen, 9 heavy cruisers moving at attack speed. The remaining Australian Defence Forces numbered less than 200 aircraft and a dozen ground batteries. She opened a channel to all units. This is it, everything we have left. Hold them for 30 more minutes and 500,000 souls escape. Fail and humanity dies with Earth. The Krell strike force descended through the atmosphere like falling stars, their approach burning the air itself. Rebecca watched the tactical display with the cold calculation of someone who had already accepted the cost. Every defense platform, every missile battery, every pilot still breathing would be thrown into this fight. The mathematics were simple and brutal. 30 minutes equaled 500,000 lives. The price would be paid in thousands. Lieutenant Park called out enemy contacts entering firing range. Rebecca authorized weapons free, and the remaining defense grid erupted. Missiles streaked upward in waves, their contrails writing epitaphs across the darkening sky. The Krell point defense carved through them with methodical efficiency, but some got through. Rebecca allowed herself one moment of satisfaction as a cruiser's shield flared, buckled, then collapsed. The victory lasted exactly 3 seconds before the damaged ship's escorts obliterated the launch platform that had struck. Victoria Cross monitored the evacuation. Progress while emergency lights bathed Shepherd Alpha in red. 90% capacity. The engineers were pushing every system beyond safe limits, cramming people into spaces meant for cargo, converting conference rooms into dormitories. A mother carrying twin infants stumbled, and Victoria caught her, guiding her toward an embarkation gate. The woman's eyes held questions Victoria could not answer. Where are we going? Will we ever come home? Victoria managed a reassuring smile she did not feel and moved to help the next family. Above the outback, the aerial battle became a maelstrom of fire and debris. Human pilots flew attack patterns that would have been considered insane in any training scenario, using their smaller size and maneuverability to dart between Krell ships. They targeted sensors, engines, anything that might slow the enemy advance. Captain Felix Dubois, a veteran of 20 years, led his squadron of 6 fighters against a cruiser escort. They managed to disable its main weapons before 5 of them were destroyed. Felix ejected, watching his burning aircraft spiral away as he descended under parachute. He landed hard in the red desert, checked his rifle, and started running toward the nearest defense position. The fight was not over. Hassan's corridor strategy was working better than he had dared hope. Civilian transports packed with refugees streamed through the gap in Krell coverage, racing toward secondary shepherd stations in Madagascar and New Zealand. Yuki tracked each flight, her voice calm as she guided pilots through the dangerous route. Transport 7-4, adjust heading by 5 degrees. You have a Krell patrol passing 200 kilometers north. The pilots trusted her completely, making corrections without question, threading their precious cargo through the gaps between death. Rebecca's screen showed the Krell breakthrough. 3 cruisers had punched through the outer defense perimeter and were accelerating toward Shepherd Alpha's location. The ground batteries opened fire, their heavier weapons scoring direct hits but failing to stop the advance. The cruisers began charging their main bombardment arrays, the kind of weapons meant to crack planetary shields. Rebecca did the calculation instantly. 4 minutes to firing range. 500 lives lost for every second they fired. General Zhang appeared on her comm screen. Pull back, Rebecca. Get your people out. The general's face was gray with exhaustion and sorrow. We both know how this ends. Rebecca shook her head sharply. 95% capacity, sir. 5 more minutes and Shepherd Alpha launches. We can give them that. Zhang studied her for a long moment, then nodded. For what it is worth, it has been an honor serving with you, Captain Torres. The screen went dark. Lieutenant Park called out a new contact, something massive emerging from orbit directly above them. Rebecca's breath caught as she recognized the profile. The Sol, Korea's last space carrier, crippled in the war's first hour and presumed destroyed. Instead, Captain Lee Min-jun had somehow kept her operational, nursing damaged engines for one final action. The carrier positioned herself directly between the Krell cruisers and Shepherd Alpha, her scarred hull blocking their firing solutions. Rebecca opened a channel. Sol, you are heavily damaged. Recommend you withdraw. Captain Lee's response came with static and background alarms. Negative, Torres. My crew voted. We have no engines left for withdrawal anyway. We will be your shield. The Krell cruisers opened fire on the Sol, their combined beam weapons carving into the carrier's armor. Captain Lee and his remaining crew of 300 held position, redirecting every scrap of power to forward shields. The carrier shuddered under the onslaught, metal screaming, hull plates exploding away in molten fragments. Rebecca watched in silent awe as the Sol bought them seconds with tons of steel and lives measured in heartbeats. The carrier listed atmosphere venting from a dozen breaches but held her position. 2 more minutes. Victoria Cross received the final boarding call. 100% capacity. The colony ship Odyssey was fully loaded, its sister ships Hope and Defiance already sealed and ready. She began the launch sequence, massive hydraulic systems moving into position. The mountain above them started to open, 1,000-ton doors sliding apart to reveal the sky. The Krell would detect them immediately once those doors opened. Everything now depended on the defenders above buying them one final minute. Rebecca saw the Sol's shields collapse and made her decision. All remaining units, full attack. Break their formation. Human forces that had been conserving strength for survival now spent it all for seconds. Fighters rammed damaged Krell ships. Ground forces fired shoulder-launched missiles, knowing the backblast would give away their positions. Hassan and Yuki fed targeting data to artillery units, prioritizing any Krell vessel with line of sight to the Shepherd launch. The Krell formation wavered, not from damage but confusion. These humans were already defeated. Why did they continue fighting? The answer came as the mountain split and Odyssey's engines ignited with thunder. The colony ship rose on a pillar of nuclear fire, followed seconds later by Hope and Defiance. The massive vessels accelerated toward orbit, their experimental drives pushing harder than any Earth ship had before. Warlord Thane saw them and snarled orders, but his forces were scattered by the human counterattack. By the time Krell ships regrouped to pursue, the colony ships had reached escape velocity. Rebecca watched the ships climb through the atmosphere, each carrying 50,000 souls, including Emma and David. She had gotten them aboard through her military access, never mentioning it to them, never saying goodbye. On her screen, the 3 blue dots representing humanity's future grew smaller, faster, leaving Earth behind. Lieutenant Park was crying silently at his station. General Zhang's final message appeared as text only. Well done, Captain. Tell my daughter I love her. The command center shook as Krell bombardment began. The soul finally broke apart, her death buying the colony ships the final seconds needed. Captain Lee's last transmission was a Korean folk song, his voice steady even as flames consumed his bridge. Rebecca closed her eyes, memorizing that song, that moment, that sacrifice. When she opened them, the colony ships had escaped the orbital zone. They were away. Victoria Cross stood in Odyssey's engineering bay, feeling the ship shudder as it pushed toward interstellar speed. Around her, 50,000 people processed what they had lost, what they carried forward. Children asked questions parents could not answer. Elders wept for a world that no longer existed. Scientists clutched their hard drives like sacred texts. Victoria moved through the crowds, offering what comfort she could, knowing that her real work, the work of building a new home, had only just begun. The colony ships traveled in formation through the darkness between stars, their drives pushing them toward a distant yellow sun that telescopes had identified years ago as humanity's backup plan. Inside Odyssey, Victoria Cross worked 18-hour days keeping the systems operational, while people adapted to life in the metal corridors that were now their entire world. She found purpose in the routine, in solving problems, in not thinking about the planet growing smaller behind them. Rebecca Torres was not aboard any colony ship. She had stayed at her post as the Krell bombardment intensified, coordinating the evacuation of other Shepherd stations until communications failed. In her final minutes, she recorded a message for Emma. My beautiful girl, I know you are scared and confused. I know you want to come home. But Earth is gone, and you carry something more precious than any of us left behind. You carry tomorrow. Be brave. Be kind. Remember that your mother loved you enough to let you go. The message joined millions of others in Odyssey's memory banks. Final words from a dying world to its children among stars. Hassan and Yuki had made it aboard Hope, their astrophysics expertise ensuring them spots in the evacuation. They established an observatory using the ship's sensors, mapping their journey, searching for the new home that awaited. Hassan spent long hours staring at the distant stars, thinking about the colleagues left behind, the telescopes that would never observe again, the accumulated knowledge of centuries burning in Earth's libraries. Yuki found him one night in the observation deck and sat beside him without speaking. Some losses were too large for words. Months passed in the darkness. The colony ships became cities unto themselves, communities forming around shared purpose. Victoria trained new engineers from among the evacuees, passing on knowledge that could not be lost. Teachers held classes for children in converted cargo bays. Doctors treated injuries and delivered babies who would never know Earth except through stories. Artists painted murals on corridor walls depicting remembered landscapes. Musicians played remembered songs. Humanity's culture, reduced to what 50,000 minds could carry, refused to fade. Emma Torres struggled with nightmares, seeing her mother's face in the flames. David held her when she woke screaming, but he had no words of comfort that felt adequate. A child psychologist named Dr. Simone Baptiste made regular visits, helping Emma process trauma too large for an 8-year-old mind. One day, she gave Emma a project. Draw what you remember. Draw what you hope for. Emma spent weeks sketching, her images evolving from burning cities to imagined forests, from falling ships to rising homes. The drawings lined her small quarters, a visual journey from grief toward something like hope. The colony ships detected their destination star system after 11 months of travel. Captain Theodore Wilson, Odyssey's commander, called a general assembly. His voice echoed through every deck. We have traveled farther than any human before us. We have endured losses that should have broken us, but we survive, and tomorrow we arrive at our new home. The planet we designated New Terra awaits. The cheering that followed carried equal parts hope and desperate need to believe that suffering meant something. New Terra appeared in the observation screens, a blue-green world only slightly smaller than Earth. Initial scans showed breathable atmosphere, liquid water, suitable temperature ranges. It seemed impossibly perfect, a gift from an indifferent universe to refugees who had lost everything. But Victoria felt uneasy as she studied the readings. Nature rarely provided such convenient solutions. Hassan and Yuki confirmed her concerns. The planet's ecosystem was too similar to Earth, as if designed rather than evolved. Somebody had been here before. The colony ships entered orbit and deployed survey teams. What they found amazed and troubled them in equal measure. Ruins dotted New Terra's continents, structures from a civilization that had achieved spaceflight before vanishing. The architecture resembled nothing in human history, all flowing curves and impossible angles. Most concerning were the monuments near what appeared to be spaceports. Each monument bore the same carved image, ships fleeing toward the stars, and behind them, dark vessels descending. Victoria led the engineering team examining the ruins. The technology level suggested the previous inhabitants had been slightly ahead of humanity. They had achieved fusion power, artificial intelligence, basic genetic engineering. And then, perhaps 500 years ago, they had evacuated their world in desperate haste. The question hung unspoken in everyone's mind. What had they been fleeing from? Was it the same enemy that destroyed Earth? Were the Krell still hunting? Despite the ruins' ominous warning, the colony ships had no choice. Fuel was depleted. Supplies were running low. 50,000 people needed ground beneath their feet and open sky above their heads. Captain Wilson authorized the landing, and massive sections of the colony ships detached to become surface habitats. Victoria supervised the deployment of fusion generators and atmospheric processors. Within weeks, New Terra held humanity's first permanent structures, prefab buildings arranged around the old alien spaceports. Emma planted the first garden in New Terra's soil, seeds saved from Earth finding purchase in alien ground. Dr. Baptiste suggested the project as therapy, a way to create rather than mourn. Emma worked the garden daily, talking to the plants as she imagined her mother would have done. Other children joined her, and the garden grew into a communal space where young survivors could process grief through growth. What began as therapy became symbol, life taking root in new soil. Hassan and Yuki established a proper observatory, grateful to study stars without ship hull interference. They also scanned for threats, knowing the Krell might follow humanity's trail. One night, working late, Yuki detected something troubling. Energy signatures in deep space, consistent with faster-than-light travel. Multiple vessels heading toward their system. She and Hassan stared at the readings, neither wanting to speak the obvious. The Krell had found them. Victoria was in an emergency planning meeting within the hour. Captain Wilson, Dr. Baptiste, and the senior colony leadership reviewed their options. They had no weapons capable of fighting Krell warships. The colony ships' drives were depleted and could not outrun pursuit. The ruins offered no obvious defensive technology. They were trapped on a world they barely understood, with an enemy approaching who had already destroyed their civilization once. Dr. Baptiste, who had been studying the alien ruins, offered an unexpected insight. I believe the previous inhabitants did not flee the Krell. The timeline does not match. The ruins are 5 centuries old. The Krell have been expanding for only 2 centuries according to our intelligence. Whoever built these cities faced a different threat. Victoria saw where the psychologist was going. If the builders had faced something worse than the Krell and survived long enough to evacuate, they might have left behind defenses or knowledge that could help. The search of the ruins intensified, teams working around the clock to decipher alien records. Emma helped catalog artifacts, her child's perspective noticing patterns the adults missed. She pointed to recurring symbols in different buildings, suggesting they indicated important locations. Following her insight, Victoria's team discovered a sealed chamber deep beneath the main spaceport. Inside, they found something impossible. The chamber held a device of elegant complexity, its purpose unclear but its importance obvious from the precision engineering. More significant were the data cores surrounding it, alien computer systems that Hassan and Yuki managed to interface with using mathematical principles they hoped were universal. The cores contained a message, and though the language was foreign, the images told a story humanity understood. A civilization at peace. Dark ships arriving from deep space. Invasion. Genocide. evacuation. But then, something different. A counterattack. A victory. And coordinates. Victoria studied the coordinates, comparing them to New Terra's position. They pointed to a moon orbiting the system's gas giant, a location the colony ships had scanned and dismissed as uninhabited. But if the alien records were accurate, that moon held something that had turned the tide for its builders, something that had allowed them to defeat an invading force and buy time for their people to escape. Whether it could work against the Krell was unknown, but it was the only hope they had. The journey to the gas giant's moon took the colony ship's remaining shuttles 6 days at maximum burn. Victoria led the expedition personally, unable to ask others to risk what she would not. Hassan and Yuki came as well. Their expertise needed to interface with alien technology. Emma insisted on coming too, her stubborn determination reminding Victoria of Rebecca Torres. Dr. Baptiste agreed, believing the child had earned the right to shape her future, rather than merely survive it. The moon appeared barren from orbit, its surface scarred by ancient bombardment, but sensors detected massive power readings beneath the crust, energy signatures that had been dormant for centuries. The expedition landed near what appeared to be an access tunnel, its entrance marked with the same flowing alien script found in New Terra's ruins. Victoria's team descended into darkness illuminated only by their lights, following corridors carved through solid rock. What they found defied understanding. A vast underground facility stretched for kilometers, its architecture suggesting it had been built by a civilization that thought in timeframes of millennia rather than years. At the facility's heart stood a construct that Hassan recognized from theoretical physics. A quantum entanglement relay, though built on a scale humanity had never imagined possible. The aliens had created a communication system that could connect instantaneously across any distance, bypassing the light-speed barrier. Yuki discovered the facility's true purpose in a data archive. The relay was not for communication. It was a weapon, or more precisely, a weapon system coordinator. The aliens had built quantum-entangled relays on every world in their civilization, then linked them to automated defense platforms hidden in deep space. When an invasion came, the platforms could respond instantly, appearing anywhere in the system with perfect coordination. The invaders who attacked this world 5 centuries ago had been destroyed by their own surprise. Every weapon they fired, every ship they deployed met by countermeasures that seemed to anticipate their moves. Victoria felt hope kindle for the first time since Earth fell. If they could activate this system, the approaching Krell fleet would face something they had never encountered. Perfect defense, instant response, a network that thought faster than any biological mind. But the facility was dormant, its power cores depleted by centuries of standby mode. Reactivating it would require massive energy input, more than their portable generators could provide. Emma provided the answer with heartbreaking simplicity. Use the colony ships. Their fusion cores still had enough power for one final operation. Victoria understood immediately and felt sick at the realization. The ships were humanity's only way to leave New Terra if the defense system failed. Using their power meant committing completely, burning the bridge behind them. If the alien weapon did not work, they would be trapped on a world facing Krell invasion with no escape. Captain Wilson called for a vote among the colony leadership. The debate lasted hours, fear and hope arguing in equal measure. Dr. Baptiste spoke for the plan, her words carrying weight from her work with the traumatized survivors. We did not come to this world to hide. We came because our people chose to face the darkness so we could live. Honor that choice. Be worthy of that sacrifice. Build something that says humanity exists and matters and will not go gently. The vote passed with 70% support. The colony ships were stripped of their fusion cores, massive generators carefully transported to the moon facility. Victoria and her engineering teams worked frantically as the Krell fleet entered the outer system. 16 days of installation, testing, praying over connections between human technology and alien engineering. The systems were fundamentally compatible, mathematics being universal, but the interfaces required creative solutions that Victoria improvised hour by hour. Hassan and Yuki mapped the defense platform's positions using the alien star charts. Hundreds of automated stations orbited in the system's outer reaches, cold and dark but intact after 5 centuries. Their weapons systems were beyond human understanding. technology that manipulated gravity and quantum states in ways that seemed more magic than physics. If they activated, the Krell would face something unprecedented. Emma spent those frantic days in the facility's control center, studying the alien interfaces with a child's pattern recognition abilities. She noticed something the adults had missed. The system required authorization codes, genetic markers from the species that built it. The facility would not fully activate for human operators. They could power it on, but the defense platforms would remain dormant without proper authentication. Victoria felt despair settle over her, then noticed Emma's thoughtful expression. The child was studying medical scans of human DNA alongside the alien genetic markers. "What are you thinking?" Victoria asked gently. Emma pointed to similarities in basic structure. They breathed oxygen like us, had DNA like us, maybe close enough. She suggested a desperate idea. What if they tried using human genetic material as a substitute, hoping the ancient system was flexible enough to accept close matches? Dr. Baptiste examined the proposal from a psychological and biological perspective. The system likely included tolerance parameters, allowing for genetic drift across generations. 500 years was time enough for a species to evolve noticeably. Human DNA might register as an evolutionary variant, rather than a foreign species. It was speculative, hopeful, desperate, but they had no alternative. Victoria volunteered her genetic sample, feeling it was her responsibility as expedition leader. The alien interface accepted her DNA, scanners analyzing her genetic code with technology humanity would need centuries to replicate. The facility hummed to life, power flowing through ancient conduits. On Victoria's display, hundreds of blue dots appeared, defense platforms waking from their long sleep. The system recognized human operators. The weapon was theirs. The Krell fleet arrived 3 days later. 9 warships, including the command carrier bearing Warlord Thane. The invasion force had tracked the colony ships across light years, determined to finish humanity's extinction. Thane reviewed the target world, noting the primitive settlements, the lack of orbital defenses, the scattered infrastructure. An easy conquest. He gave the order to begin bombardment and prepared to savor humanity's final moments. The defense platforms activated with no warning, appearing from impossible angles as they manipulated space itself. Krell sensors registered energy spikes, then massive impacts as weapons struck with precision beyond organic reflexes. Shields collapsed. Hulls breached. 3 warships were destroyed in the opening seconds before the Krell could even identify what was attacking them. Warlord Thane watched his fleet torn apart by an enemy that seemed to exist everywhere at once, and screamed orders that went unheeded as communications died. Victoria monitored the battle from the moon facility, the alien interface translating tactical data into formats her mind could process. The defense platforms fought with terrible efficiency, each shot calculated to maximize damage while conserving energy. They disabled the Krell command carrier's weapons, then its engines, leaving it drifting helplessly. The remaining Krell ships attempted to flee, but the platforms pursued with relentless focus. Within 20 minutes, humanity's would-be destroyers were debris fields spreading through the outer system. Captain Wilson contacted the drifting Krell command carrier, his message simple. "You came to finish what you started at Earth. You failed. This world and its people are under protection beyond your understanding. Leave this system and never return, or face complete destruction." Warlord Thane, trapped on his powerless bridge, felt something his species rarely experienced. Fear of something greater than themselves. The Krell retreated, their survivorship allowed to escape as a message to others. Humanity watched them flee, processing the impossible fact that they had won, not through superior strength but through the gift left by another civilization that understood what it meant to face extinction. The aliens who built New Terra's cities were gone, but their legacy endured in the defense system they created. A legacy now protecting the species that inherited their world. Victoria stood in the alien facility with Emma beside her, both of them exhausted and overwhelmed. The child looked up at her. "We won?" Victoria nodded, putting an arm around Emma's shoulders. "We survived. We found a home. We proved that humanity is worth defending." Emma was quiet for a moment, then asked the question Victoria had been dreading. "Was it worth what we lost? Everyone who died, Mom?" Victoria chose her words carefully, knowing Emma would remember them. "Your mother and everyone who stayed behind made a choice. They decided your life mattered more than theirs. They did not die hoping we would just survive. They died hoping we would build something worth their sacrifice. A civilization that remembers where we came from and never forgets the price we paid to be here. She gestured to the alien technology surrounding them. These builders faced the same choice our people did. Give up or give everything. They gave everything, and 5 centuries later their gift saved us. That is the legacy we inherit. That is the legacy we must continue. The colony on New Terra grew into a thriving settlement over the following years. Engineers studied the alien technology, learning principles that advanced human science by generations. Teachers told children stories of Earth, keeping the memory of their origin world alive. Artists created memorials honoring those who stayed behind, monuments that would endure for centuries. Emma's garden expanded into farms that fed thousands, food grown in alien soil from seeds saved from a dead world. Hassan and Yuki established an academy for astrophysics and xenobiology, training new generations to explore the mysteries their adopted world offered. They discovered that the ruins contained more than weapons and warnings. The aliens had left libraries, art galleries, music preserved in quantum storage, a whole civilization's culture waiting to be understood. Humanity had lost Earth, but gained connection to something larger. Proof they were not alone in the universe, that other species had faced darkness and endured. Dr. Baptiste worked with trauma survivors, helping them transform grief into purpose. She established support networks where people could share stories, process loss, and find meaning in continuation. The work was never finished, healing being a journey rather than a destination. But slowly the colony's people learned to carry their pain without being crushed by it. They learned that surviving was not betraying those who died. Living well was honoring them. Victoria Cross watched New Terra's sun set over the growing city. Buildings made from Earth designs adapted to alien materials. The sky showed 2 moons, one natural and one that held the defense system keeping them safe. Somewhere among the stars the Krell still threatened, but humanity now had time. Time to build, to grow, to become something stronger than what they were. The fall of Earth was not humanity's end. It was transformation through trial by fire. Emma Torres stood beside Victoria, now 17 and training as an engineer. She often visited the memorial wall where her mother's message played on repeat. Rebecca's voice spoke across years and light years, words of love and hope that never faded. Emma had stopped asking if the sacrifice was worth it. She understood now that the question was not whether it was worth it, but what they would do with the gift they had been given. The colony thrived not despite its trauma, but because of how its people chose to carry forward. They built schools teaching both human and alien knowledge. They created art celebrating survival and remembering loss. They established laws protecting individual dignity while prioritizing collective welfare. They prepared for threats while refusing to live in fear. They became not just survivors of Earth's fall, but architects of humanity's next chapter. As stars emerged in New Terra's evening sky, Victoria thought about the journey from that terrible day when the Krell arrived to this moment of hard-won peace. 50,000 people had become humanity's seed, carrying forward everything their species had been and everything it might become. The colony ships were scrap metal now, their parts repurposed into infrastructure. But what they carried, the precious cargo of human potential, had taken root and flourished. Emma looked up at the stars and asked the question Victoria had once asked herself. Do you think anyone else escaped Earth? Other colonies? Victoria smiled. I hope so. I hope we find them someday and share what we have learned. But even if we are the only survivors, we are enough. 50,000 became 60,000. In a generation, we will be hundreds of thousands. Humanity continues not because we are the strongest or the most advanced, but because we refuse to let the darkness have the final word. The two of them stood together as night deepened, representative of the bond between those who remembered Earth and those who would only know it through stories. Behind them, lights flickered on across New Terra's growing cities. Ahead, the defense platforms maintained their silent vigil among the stars. And in the hearts of humanity's remnant, burned something the Krell had tried to extinguish but failed. The stubborn, impossible, essential conviction that tomorrow was worth fighting for, that life was worth protecting, that the fall of humanity was not an ending, but a beginning of something greater still to come.